Hello, everyone. So today at the keynote, you probably heard that we are unifying the developer experience for instant apps and Android app bundles. And so my colleague Ben and I are going to talk to you a little bit about how that works from the developer perspective. So instant apps, it's a technology that we introduced a little over 2 years ago at Google I/O. And it lets you give your users a native Android app experience without them having to explicitly go and install your app from the Play Store. Now, how that works is you split up your app into smaller pieces called features, and the user can reach those via a link, a URL, and also via other means, as we'll see later in this presentation. Now, to get your app small enough and to be able to launch it instantly, Instant Apps for the first time used a technology that we introduced in Android 5 Lollipop that's called split APKs. Now, with configuration split APKs, Play Store was able to deliver the smallest, most optimized version of your app to a user's device. Now, in order to do that, the build system, the Gradle Android build system that you have, that you build your apps with, built all of those split APKs locally, bundled them in a zip file called an instant bundle, and then you upload that to the Play Store, so the Play Store can choose from the set of APKs and deliver them to devices. Now, to do that, the developer had to do some significant refactoring in your apps. So the project structure of an instant app, as it looked 1 year ago, looked probably something like this. First of all, you had to take all of your base application code and move it from the application module to a base feature. Then you had to split your app into feature modules containing the various features in your app, or normally we would call them screens or activities. And then you had these two almost empty dummy modules, application and instant app, for building the artifact that we need. So the APK for application, that would be the installed application that you used to have. And then the instant app zip bundle that would contain all the split APKs that you upload to a separate track in the Play Store. Now, this was not ideal. As I said, it required significant work from you. Your project no longer looked simple. At the same time, this year, we introduced a new publishing format for Android apps called the Android App Bundle, or AAB. Now, this format preserves some more information about what's happening in your project. It contains some metadata about targeting of the resources, native libraries, and so on that are in your project. But it also actually retains some of the module information about a new type of module called dynamic feature that's in your project. Now, I called it a publishing format because you use it to upload this whole big bundle telling the Play Store everything about your app to Play. And then, together with Google Play Dynamic Delivery, we are able to serve an optimized set of split APKs to users' devices. Now, in order to do that, there's one big difference. Because it happens on the server side, on the Play Store, we need to be able to re-sign your app. That's why if you use an Android app bundle, you have to enable app signing by Google Play. Now, that's a good thing. Actually, if you let us store your key for you, it is safer, it's more secure. But there's also another benefit. Thanks to the fact that we can transform your APKs and make them more optimized, as we develop more optimizations on the Play Store side, over time, what we deliver to users' devices can be even more optimized, as we just announced with uncompressed libraries. And so it will make sense to move instant apps to this new model. Why build all the APKs locally and then not be able to optimize them further on the Play Store? What if we could use the new app bundle format to deliver an instant app experience to our users? So let me tell you how to go back to that simpler, better project structure for your instant apps. So if you've ever done that whole dance to move modules around and move your code to a base feature and so on, we literally have to go back to that simple project you use as you would build your APK. So first of all, we no longer need the instant app plugin. Everything that we need is baked into the application plugin that can now build bundles. And so we don't need the base feature anymore. Instead, we can move our code back to the application. We'll be using that to build our unified bundle artifact. And so, again, with feature modules, we now replace them with dynamic features that work in the app bundle world. So ultimately, we want something simple. You can have your application module with any additional library modules that you need. Optionally, we have dynamic features that can be downloaded on demand, adding functionality to your app at runtime. And we have this single piece of metadata that tells the Play Store that this bundle is Instant App enabled. So that would be great if you could upload that one artifact to the Play Store and have it published both on the installed and instant track. And that's exactly what we're aiming for. Now, there's one caveat. We are currently testing that with our partners, but you might not actually be able to upload this single artifact to the Play Store just yet. That's why, if you want to try it right now, I suggest you create 2 product variants in this simple project structure still. And in one of the variants, simply enable the metadata with enabling the Instant App for your bundle, and use the other variant to build a bundle without that entry in the manifest. It's still simple enough, still one project, one app, one code base. Just for the time being, you might have to do that in order to upload to the Play Store. And by the way, there's another whitelist. If you want to use dynamic features in order to let your users download them on demand as they run your app, this is also under a whitelist for developers who want to test that. You can apply online. However, you are currently not able to publish your app to the production track if you have more than one module. OK, so how to try it yourself right now? First thing you need to do is use the new Android Studio 3.3 that's currently on the beta channel. And if you're creating a project from scratch, you can simply select this checkbox. We'll create the modules with the necessary metadata already in there. So that's how it looks like in your base manifest. You instant enable it, and you're good to go. If your app is compliant with all the other Instant App restrictions, such as file size, which Ben will talk about later, now you have a chance to publish an instant enabled bundle already. Now, if you already have a project which you're using to build an app bundle, you can also use the new module wizard to add a new instant dynamic feature module. This will also, if you add one of these, this will also instant enable your base module if you haven't done so. Now, all that's left is build an app bundle, either through Gradle, so the bundle release command instead of assemble release, or through the wizard and the UI. By the way, if you're using our Android Dev Summit app right here at this conference, it's been built exactly as an instant enable app bundle. So we published that to through our channels on the Play Store. What you're using right now is exactly what I'm talking about. And it's been great. It's greatly simplified what we had to do in order to have that working. Now let me invite on stage Ben, who will tell you a little bit about best practices for modularizing and discovery of your app. Ben?
Thank you.
Round of applause, please.
Thank you very much. So yeah, let me talk a bit about discoverability of your instant apps. Basically, one of them you already saw, which is the Try Now functionality. I'll talk a little bit more about this. So Try Now basically is a second button that you get on the Play Store, which allows your users to download and run the app straight from the Play Store without having to permanently install it on the device. That's a great experience that you can easily see how it worked. You can go to the Play Store now and check it out for the Android Dev Summit app. And your users can launch it directly from the landing page. It's quite cool. And if you don't have a URL associated with your app, that works as well. So you don't have the restrictions that your app has to map to URLs anymore. How do you do that? That's basically it. I think that everybody has this somewhere in their application. It's the main launcher. And if you don't have to do anything else than add the instant metadata that you already Wojtek showed you earlier. So there's nothing else that you have to do in order to be eligible for the Try Now experience. But what if you want to have your app available with a URL mapping? That allows you basically to access your app through any URL that you have associated with your app. The first thing you have to do is you have to verify that you own the domain. To do that, you generate and upload an asset links JSON file. There's a couple of helpers online that verify whether the file you uploaded is correct and the one that you have in your app, the mapping is correct with that as well. And then you can share the link with anyone, and they can open the app straight away. Let me walk you through how that works from where we started with the main launcher. Basically, you have to set a second intent filter with the auto-verify flag set to true. That flag tells the Play Store that it should check for the asset links JSON file on the URL provided below. Then you add the action view, category browsable and default, that you say that this is the one thing that I want to use as the default to view this URL. You then add the schemes for HTTP, HTTPS, and you can add multiple paths or path prefixes to just walk user through to multiple of your activities. For the one that you want to use as the default activity, so when they come from try now or whether they come from your home screen, is the metadata here that has to be a sibling tag to the above intent filter, which just says this is a default URL, and this is where I want my users to come in initially. Like I said earlier, if you don't have a URL in the first place, you don't have to do this. But if you have to have a URL mapping, then this is the way to go. And it's not a lot of work to do. And it gives you your users the experience that you can share any link that leads to your app, and any Android user can then open the app straight away without having to install it permanently. And I think for a conference, it's a good use case to have an app that you use once, and you don't have to fully install it. You have the instant app, and for a couple of features, like in our case, it's notifications, you still have to install the app. But it's fair enough to have an experience that you can start straight away without the first steps necessary. Also, there's another thing that we use for app bundles in order to download code dynamically. So going back to the previous section is basically you can do that with the zip and feature instant apps. What we're going on forward now, you have to ship your app as an app bundle, and you have to use dynamic feature modules in order to make use of the PlayCore library. The PlayCore library allows you to download features dynamically on demand, so not during the initial installation, and it's unified between instant app and installed app. So you don't have to do different calls on that. And it does all the heavy lifting. So if you say to PlayCore library, download this, it connects to the Play Store, it downloads it, it puts it in the right place. For instant apps, it puts it into the shared cache there. And for an installed app, it installs it on the device permanently. So how does it work? Well, you add it as a dependency available from Maven Google Com and use it in your project. And then you create a split install manager factory within your activity, hold on to that, create a request where you can install one or multiple modules at the same time. Those module names have to match the module name that you set for the dynamic feature module directly in the manifest of that module. You build it, and then you just tell the manager, start the installation. And that's all the code that you need in order to get started with it. Obviously, there's a couple of things that you have to do around it. I'll go into that in a second. But before we do that, if you don't want to start the installation straight away, there's a way to do a deferred installation. So for example, if you have your instant app, you started it, and you know that your user is in a flow where they're, for example, buying something. So they've logged in, then they're starting the purchase process, and you want to download a payment module, for example. You can do that deferred, or during the flow when the user's in that, you can do these installations. Also, uninstallation, it's deferred at some point. So that means the uninstallation doesn't get done straight away, but at some point where the system says, yes, I'm cleaning up, and this is where this module also gets removed. And you can also cancel installation requests. If for whatever reason you, from the developer perspective, want to cancel that, there's an option to do it. And there's a listener that you can set on the manager. That's my preferred way of listening for the state updates, the split install state update listener. It's quite a word. And that's quite a few things. So usually what happens, the happy path is you trigger an install, your app starts with pending, and then goes to downloading, download it, and then there's installing and installed. That's your happy path. That's what happens for an app that is, or for a module that is small enough to not trigger the requires user confirmation. If you go into that state, you will be given some information that you can start an intent with, and that intent allows you to show a dialog that the user can confirm or deny whether they want to install this module at this point. If they confirm that they want to install, you come back into the happy path and continue downloading an installation. At most points of that, your installation can be canceled or in a canceling state, as well as for a couple of reasons, it can fail. So that's the path where you have to handle all those states. We do have a sample available for that, and I'll share URLs for that later on in this session. So you can take a look at how it works. Like I talked a little bit about file size. The the limit that triggers, for example, the requires user confirmation coincides with a couple of limits that we have set for instant apps in general and for dynamic delivery. One of the things we do is we don't take the installed size or the downloaded size as the main factor anymore. So if your app on device has a file size that's larger than a limit, then that's all right, because we take the download size into account. So you get some compression over the wire, and that's what we take into account for that. And this will be shown on the Play console as well. So you'll see your download size is this, so you're above or below the threshold. Also, dynamic feature modules don't fall into the initial download size as well. What falls into it is basically your base module and your instant entry module. If you have more than one, which you can have, then it's your base module and your largest instant entry module. And those, currently under a whitelist, have to be less than 10 megabytes. Dynamic feature modules that you download later on, or other instant entry modules that are smaller, don't fall into these 10 megabytes in the first place. But let me tell you a little bit about what this entails. So if your app is larger than 10 megabytes, well, you don't get any of the instant app benefits. Your app can't be discoverable to users as an instant app. If your app is less than 10 but more than 4 megabytes, your app can be seen as an instant app and can be used as an instant app. So you can show it, you can access it through Try Now on the Play Store, and also you can show it in web banners or share it via URLs. If your app or your base module and your instant entry module is less than 4 megabytes, then your app can be discovered from everywhere. That means from ads, from search results. So for example, if you search for the Android Dev Summit app, you will see a search result. If you click that, you will go straight to the instant app on your Android device. That's because it's under this 4 megabyte threshold. And while you're at it, you can continue modularizing. I know modularizing is a tricky topic because it entails some work that some people are not 100% certain how that is done best. We recently went through the whole process with a project. It's called Plaid. It's online it's available on GitHub. And I'll talk a little bit about how we managed to move away from a monolithic app to an app that uses app bundles and dynamic feature modules. While it's not currently an instant app, it, due to the unified approach, uses the same technology underneath that you can use for modularizing an instant app as well. So firstly, what we did is and most apps will do, is we created a base module, which hosts all the domain code and data, so shared preferences, login, for example, some repositories, some persistent API calls, and things like that. And on top of that are different feature modules. Those feature modules have their own domain code, their own logic, and obviously the UI, which is only displayed in this module. And that setup can be used for many apps if you have a base module which shares information, and on top of that, the different feature modules. But let me share a little bit on more in-depth what we did. So initially, we had an app, which is the module that most people have. So we had this monolith. And if we shipped as an APK, that's fine, because, well, there's no reason to go into the whole modularization part if we, in the end, have one single monolithic APK that we ship to our users. But since we were considering going towards dynamic feature modules and app bundles, we moved everything into a base, which on the one hand had the shared dependencies, which basically means everything that we include coming from whatever repositories externally, as well as a couple of local third-party APIs and libraries that we have forked and worked with. After we had this, we started working on features that we extracted from the app itself. The first that we started with was an about screen, because, well, an about screen is kind of untangled from most of the stuff that we have within the app. So it's a good starting point for getting our hands a bit wet with how do we, what does it actually entail to make a dynamic feature module? How do we do all those things? Then we went on to do a search screen. And after that, we have two new sources that we extracted into dynamic feature modules as well. And they all depend on the app. And the app and everything shares the information through that as well. You can read up more in-depth on a blog post on the Android Developers Medium blog publication. And also, we do have information available on instant apps in general and on App Bundle, as well as samples on Android dynamic features, as well as how to use instant app without URLs. The Android Instant Apps team is outside at the office hours to share information and knowledge. If you have questions, please come over there. And with that, thank you very much.